This is the J. Scott Outdoors podcast on Western big game hunting and fishing, and I'm your host, Jay Scott. I live and breathe hunting and fishing, spending half the year in the field enjoying God's creation. I hope you'll enjoy hearing about our adventures. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we have a guest from Dutch John, Utah, from the Flaming Gorge Resort. We have Woody Bair, and I met Woody actually last summer when I took a couple friends of mine, Jack Olson and MJ Mastelier, up to the Green River to do some fly fishing, and was in the Flaming Gorge fly shop there at the met Woody, and he talked to us about the river and what was going on, and we just happened to catch the Cicada hatch. And Woody, it's good to have you this morning. How you doing?
Good, Jay. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I know it's going to be a good show, and my listeners are going to really learn a lot. Why don't you tell me a little bit of history about the Flaming Gorge Reservoir, how it came about, and why it was made and such.
Sure. So the Flaming Gorge, like many other big reservoirs, were all kind of built during the same kind of time period on the Colorado River. And really the main reason was irrigation and water storage. And then, of course, the dams came along with that. They were able to get the hydroelectric power component of that as kind of the sidelight. So really a neat thing that Bureau of Reclamation did was create these reservoirs and in turn created world-class tailwater fisheries that are completely protected against salinity, for the most part, and are protected rivers like nowhere else. It's a great opportunity. Of course, the Flaming Gorge Dam was built, started in the late 50s, and they dedicated it, I think, in 1964. And during that same time, of course, the Flaming Gorge Lodge was owned and operated, and that was the start of this business, and then the start of many other businesses: rafting companies, fishing companies, charter companies, rentals, all kinds of economic growth happened for our small county.
Yeah, and Woody, you're actually in Utah, but you're very close to the Wyoming line. Is that correct? And how much of the actual Flaming Gorge Reservoir is in Utah, and how much is in Wyoming? And how long is the lake? How deep is it? How long is it? Give me some of those.
Sure. The lake is about 91 miles long, and they measure that from approximately the dam up into the river confluence up near Green River, Wyoming. The majority of the lake is actually in Wyoming. There's probably the better part. I'm not sure the exact number, but I'm guessing probably in the range of 50 to 60 of those miles are in Wyoming. There's 364 miles of shoreline, there's 3 marinas. There's tons of boat docks and access points around the lake. We tend to think that we are the prettier end of the lake. This is more of the canyon end of the lake, up into the Wyoming area. It's kind of more flat, and it's kind of it's shallower. Oftentimes in the Wyoming portion, you're talking maybe 60 to 100 foot depths, which is still pretty deep. But when you get down into the canyon-y parts, so we can see depths up to 300 feet.
Wow.
So when we're using our fish finders or depth finders and kind of messing around in the lake, we're seeing some pretty deep depths. But oftentimes you'll see a lot of 150, 200 plus areas.
Wow. And the fish primarily in the reservoir, what are the main fish as far as numbers of game fish such in the reservoir? Is it trout? Is it bass? What is it?
So really what we've really become known for is 2 main game species: the lake trout, which have gotten huge over the years. The largest lake trout that's ever been caught is over 52 pounds. That we often catch them in the 40s and 30s. So the lake, we've become a world renowned. In fact, I would put us up against anywhere in the lower 48. I don't think anybody in the lower 48 can catch the lake trout. Maybe some Canada lakes, but lake trout is really our premier big game fish. Our other main species is Kokanee salmon, which they're a landlocked strain of salmon, and they spawn in the lake. There's two strains. One spawns in the lake and one spawns in Sheep Creek and a few of the tributaries, and oftentimes in the fall you can go and check those out. Those are the two main game species that people come from all over that they can't really get anywhere else. We also, of course, have trout, rainbow trout. There's a few browns left in there, not as many as there used to be. And there's bass. It's a great smallmouth bass fishery. A lot of times we're catching 3 to 5 pounders. There's a lot of dinks, but the bass is come a long ways. There's carp. There's the new invasive species that we've just got that we're not excited about is the burbot, which is a little freshwater lean cod. But they've been very popular with anglers through the ice, and guys are even starting to target them now in the summer. And we fish for those mostly at night. So there's quite a few different species on the reservoir that a guy can target.
And you guys have guide services that not only we'll get to later fish in the Green River down below the dam in all the trophy water down there, quality water, but your guide services also offer service for the kokanee and the lake trout?
We actually
and the smallmouth, or
we actually don't have a permit for the lake. There are many good companies around the reservoir that do target, especially the lake trout and the kokanee.
Okay.
And we help people sign up with those guys all the time. There's a couple that are real close within short driving distance, 5 minutes or less. There's also a lot out of Manila. If you want to target those big trophy lake trout, we definitely want to highlight the 2 or 3 different guys that can really help with that.
Sounds good. And Woody, how long have you been were you born and raised right there, or when did you move up there and start working at the resort?
So we started, this is a third generation business. The original business in 1956, like I said before, my father-in-law, my wife's grandfather, I guess, bought the business in 1971. And my father-in-law and his brothers worked it, and now we're into the third generation. My wife was born and raised here, went to school in all the little towns here. I've been here for 10 years.
Nice.
My wife and I met at college, and then we came back, and we're going into our 10th season, I guess. We've been here 9 years. We're going into our 10th season.
That's fantastic. And at the resort itself, you guys have a fly shop, a restaurant, a motel. You have also, I believe, like some condos type stuff. Tell me a little bit about that, what you guys offer there.
We have a really diverse property here. We have, of course, in my mind, a world-renowned fly shop. We have more flies than just about anyone else. We sell so many flies, and we have such a diverse patterns that you won't be able to find this diverse group of flies anywhere. I would bet against that. We have a fully stocked shop, and of course we have little, souvenirs and gift items. We have a great restaurant. We serve 3 meals a day in our restaurant. We, of course, have gas station. We have 48 rooms of different types. We have basic motel packages, 2-bed packages. Then we have what we call condo suites, which are like a 1-bedroom apartment. They have a fully appointed kitchen, a living room, bigger bathrooms, everything. Those are really popular if people want to come and cook. We have those are also outfitted outside with barbecues, and we also have RV park, and we just expanded our RV park another 47 sites. So now we have over 60 sites of RV and we can take pretty much anything up to 100 foot and down to tent sites. We also offer raft rentals. We have rafts, inflatable kayaks. We have inflatable paddle boards. We have fishing catarafts and a drift boat even that we rent. We have boat storage. You name it, we have it. This is a fantastic place.
Yeah, I'm having gone there many times over the years. I've stayed in a lot of different parts of your rooms and such, as far as the lodging, and ate at the restaurant a bunch of times. And of course, what you're saying about the fly shop is absolutely true. It's mind-boggling when you actually go in there and start going through the fly bins, which obviously I'm a little bit of a tackle junkie as far as all types of fishing, but fly fishing for sure. I mean, I just love to come and look in the bins and talk to the guys at the shop about all the different patterns, and it's amazing how you guys have, patterns that are local patterns that work specifically for the river. And then as well as you can take a lot of those patterns and use them at Lee's Ferry or the San Juan or, on Freestone rivers as well. But the variety of patterns is just mind-boggling. Just a fantastic opportunity to look at amazing flies.
Well, I appreciate that. The other comment that we get a lot on our flies is that, you go to a store, and I won't name the names, let's call them big box stores for lack of a better term, big box sports stores. Oftentimes you can go in there and find a lot of the flies, similar flies that we carry, but they're in really the wrong sizes for us. Tailwater fisheries, normally you need smaller flies. We have parachute Adams down to 26, and good luck finding a 26 parachute Adams at a big store. They sell 14s and 16s. Just things like that. The more specialized stuff that's really critical when you get into tailwater fisheries and finicky fish, clearwater fisheries, those fish a lot of times are spooky and they're scared, and you want to have the right size stuff, and really that's what we specialize in.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about those fish in the A, B, and C section. I fish the green quite often. I've been there in March and April for the midge and the blue winged olive hatch, and I've been there in the summer multiple times for the cicada hatch, and caught some great days with the ant patterns and some of the different stuff. What's going on the river right now with the blue winged olives, and how has their timing been, and what do you see the forecast being, say, for the next 30 days for fishing there?
So I want to just preface, the main thing that we all really got into fly fishing for was to fish dry flies. And really, we will be able to fish dry flies pretty much now through the end of the summer with varying degrees of success. But dry flies are kind of everything that excites us about the Green River. Not only the water clarity and the dry flies, but the quality of fish. And the fish conditions are fantastic right now. Rainbows with shoulders and big fat bellies, good stout browns, and things are really looking up for us. We had a fantastic dry fly year last year. We look forward to that again this year. Right now we're seeing tons of midges. Of course, midges are always going to be small when it's cold. We see all those little tiny midges, and fish just kind of sipping the surface, and it's a lot of fun. We are starting to see the blue wings kind of pop. Right now we're just seeing the onesie, twosies, not really the big rafts of blue wings that we will see in April. And that's really when our season really kicks off, is when those big rafts of blue wings kind of start floating down the river. And we look forward to that. Everything looks to be on track. We like to see, kind of the normal spring patterns with the little bit of snow and rain, and then the melting cycles, and that all pretty much lends to what we forecast in the next 30 days.
And blue wings are a cloudy bug. If you have cloudy days, you're going to have, pretty epic hatches. Am I correct in saying that?
So because the blue wing is in the mayfly family, my understanding is that they're going to hatch almost every day. The difference of when you have overcast or rainy or humid days is when they emerge, when they're in that final adult life cycle and they come out of the water. They emerge in the water. Their wings will spread. On a bright sunny day, their wings dry out really fast and they can pop off the water really quickly. On an overcast day or a day where it's even snowing or raining, when they emerge, their wings stay wet and they can't fly off. So the adult basically just sits and bobs along the surface of the water, and then the fish really get keyed on them. And that's really why it feels like there's really more on the cloudy days. Those straight sunny days, they'll be flying all around, but there won't be any fish rising, or very few. And those cloudy days or the rainy days, the fish are going nuts and just gorging on them.
From a tactical standpoint, as far as on a sunny day, the fish may not be keyed in on the surface, but they would still be taking the emerger patterns and such below the surface, correct?
Absolutely. So what we would look for on those days is a suspended fish, and we try to you try to look and see, especially with our water clarity, it makes it a little bit easier, but you can see where they're suspended. So oftentimes, if you see them just under the surface where you're just seeing backs and noses, they're eating emergers. So you want to fish something that's going to be in that water column, whether it's a emerger in the film or a wet emerger just under the surface on a short dropper. Maybe it's unweighted. So you can just stay in that 3-inch water column, And then, of course, if you see them in the 6 to 12 to 18 inch or even deeper, then we're going to try to figure out how to get to that level, whether it's a tungsten bead or a gold bead, something that's going to get to that level, maybe do a dry dropper. And if they get below that, then I pretty much mostly recommend, we're going to have to go to a straight nymph rig. If you're doing a dry and a 6-foot dropper, you're probably really nymphing anyway. So, we have to just roll with those changes.
Yeah, and right now you've got conditions where the midges are the predominant hatch. And do you fish, Griffiths, gnats, and stuff like that when they're rising on midge clusters, or are you mainly nymphing and really picking the fish off as the midges are emerging?
Both. So really,
Okay.
We're seeing about an hour to an hour and a half a day of the real hard midge hatch where the fish seem to really be keyed on them. And the timing, of course, varies a little bit, but if you were noon to 1, in that range of that warm part of the day, you'll see the fish really actively eating midges. The other thing that I like to tell people too is that, we got to remember that big 18-inch fish or 20-inch fish or whatever he is, oftentimes isn't going to expend a lot of energy for a size 22 or a 24. He's just going to be slurping. So things in cluster patterns like Griffiths gnats or paramating midge or little emergers that are just in the surface film, those are really what they're eating, what they're kind of keyed in on. Because what they'll do is wait for those big clusters to happen, when there's a foam line or a scum line, and then they'll just can get a mouthful at a time. Instead of eating one skittle at a time, they get a one big bite.
Absolutely. And are you seeing browns and rainbows both rising, or is it predominantly browns or predominantly rainbows?
Boy, that's a tough one. That, generally, and this is one of the big generalizations of fishing, is that the rainbows tend to like the more oxygenated water, and the browns tend to like the more pocket slow water. That doesn't mean that they can't go in the other places. So it kind of depends on where you're fishing. If you're in the faster riffly water, let's say lower A section, typically we'll start to see a few more rainbows in those areas. In the slow water, slick water stuff in the upper A or maybe in the lower B, we'll start to see kind of a higher concentration of browns. I don't know that you can say one or the other is only eating those.
Okay. And you talk about A, B, and C section. Can you give me a little bit of just a rundown on each section and maybe some of the common areas? I believe in the A section all the way down to Little Hole, there's a hiking trail. I believe on the river left side. Can you just kind of walk me through all three sections?
Sure.
And give me kind of the characteristics of each.
Sure. The A section is really the pinnacle of what the green reputation is. It is a beautiful, deep canyon. The A section is technically about 7 miles long. The upper half of that, or is a lot of the pocket water. So there's big pools, deep pools, and some slick water, and it's a slower moving section. And that, of course, is from the dam down. When you get about mid-river down, you start to see more riffly water. We call it the fast water. So you see a lot more long, wide, river-wide riffles, a few more rapids, a little more concentration of rapids on the lower A, more rocky areas. In this area we tend to fish, trying to hit those little, especially with dries, you're going to try to hit the little pocket water behind all the eddy breaks. The A section is most notably known for the high fish population. Because of the dam and the way they're structured they have a selective withdrawal unit, they can kind of change the temperature of the river. So they try to maintain that, and that's good for food growth and also good for bug growth. So that section, the A section, averages about 12 to 15,000 fish per mile. So it's the fish count is amazing.
Isn't that like some of the highest in the country?
But
as far as trout,
I believe so. I don't think there's very many places. I mean, I know that there's some other rivers that they talk about 50 to 1,000, fish per mile, like it's great. And it's like that's nothing compares to this. And in fact, the mile right by the dam, they estimate that's right around 20,000, and the mile right near Little Hole is around 21,000 in that mile. So
I mean, the first time I ever went to the green, we were floating down, and like the first 100 yards, my buddies, I was kind of taking it all in because it's a beautiful place with the canyon and the big walls and canyon walls and the, beautiful cliffs and pine trees and stuff. And he's like, Jay, look in the water. And I looked down, and it was like you're in an aquarium, because the water is, it was, most of the time, it's crystal clear.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see to the bottom at all depths, and all you see is fish. It's unbelievable. So 12 to 15,000 in the A section.
Yep, and that's really what is one of the things that just makes it incredible. So protected tailwater fishery with that kind of fish count, there's no other place that compares. And in fact, just like what you were saying, oftentimes when our guide clients are going down, they're looking at the canyon walls. We see deer, we've seen moose, we've seen bears, all those things on the A section. And in fact, we usually have to tell some of our clients that they have a fish on because they're just so enamored with the scenery. It's absolutely amazing. And so the A section is the dam to Little Hole. Of course, just like you said, there's great access. There's a walking trail down the river left the whole way, and I would call it probably a low, moderate type of hike. I mean, it's there's a little bit of rocks, but for the most part, it's a well-maintained trail. There's bathrooms down around mile marker 5. There's bathrooms, of course, at the dam and at Little Hole, so there's plenty of facilities there. There is no camping or fires allowed on the A section, and that is to try to help maintain the pristine area because of the amount of use. So when you go past Little Hole, let's say if you're drifting, then there's camps. There's a bunch of different camps all along both sides of the river that you can have fires, that you can camp overnight. And that's one thing that separates the A and the B section. The upper B section is a lot like the A. You still have a lot of the kind of the deeper canyon kind of feel. The lower section, when you get a little bit further down, is more flat water. So you get more grassy cut banks. That's really popular during hopper season when you get a little breeze in the afternoon, pushes some of those hoppers in the river, and the fish can really key on them there. And the C section is really similar to the B. It's managed by the B dam. It's a lot more flat water, and you get a lot slower moving stuff. The water clarity down there does become a little bit of an issue at times, even on the lower B section. But that's where, it's kind of always been that there's less fish per mile, but oftentimes there's some bigger ones. So, if you want to target more aggressive big browns, we're stripping streamers down in the lower B and C sections and finding some success there.
And where would you say the biggest fish in all of A, B, and C, are they in A, right up by the dam, or are they mixed throughout the whole river? Where are the biggest fish in all of those sections?
So the river record was caught very close to the dam. I mean, I don't know. There was always controversy anytime that there's a record that he was too close to the dam. And there's some really big fish that kind of just hang right at the bottom of the dam. We can't angle for them. They get fed by the people who take the dam tour. They have little feeders and everything that gets, kind of churned down through the dam. So we know there's big ones there. We've seen them come down further. They've caught some big ones there. Those big fish don't normally eat bugs. They're going to eat other fish. They're going to eat big things, dead things. Over the last few years, though, we have seen a bigger emergence of larger 25-inch plus fish. In the B section, 27-inch fish. We found some there. We seem to be finding them still in B. We once in a while will get one on the A, but because I think of the amount of fish that are there, I think the big ones tend to be further down.
Gotcha. And so with the blue winged olives coming the main time, if you had to pick, say 2 weeks that year in and year out is typically the best time for blue winged olives, when is that time
I would
period?
say second and third week of April. If you were trying to plan a trip, and it's always hard. We try to plan trips around blue winged olives, around cicadas, around hoppers, around yellow sallies, because those hatches are huge and the fish just go nuts. So blue winged olives, I would say, second, third week of April, maybe into the fourth week. But we're so dependent on weather on those hatches that it can come and go and miss those time frames.
Sure, absolutely. And then May and June, you move into cicada season. How how does the outlook look? How I was fished it last year several times for the cicadas. How does this season look for cicada season?
Everything is pointing to be good. I mean, they traditionally would like the warmer, drier kind of climate. My understanding of cicadas, they burrow into the box elder trees and they lay their eggs near the roots underground. And so the soil needs to be to a certain temperature and a certain humidity. They pretty much hatch every year. There's just different amounts of them that will. So when those happen, you know, if the soil temperature is good and warm and it's really dry, that's when we really start seeing cicadas. So based on the weather patterns that I'm seeing, you know, we're really warm right now. It's supposed to be in the low 50s today here at 7,000 feet. It's incredible. And 60s over the next week. You know, I would venture to say that we should have a pretty good cicada hatch.
You know, I have an unbelievable story, and you've probably heard it a million times, but so we were floating down last June, and both my buddies were rolling big cicada patterns, and we were having just a heck of a time, and just fish were exploding. It was unbelievable. And one of my buddies had a fish on, and he hammered a cicada. They actually, I believe, had a double at one time, and I think one of them got off. And to make a long story short, the guy that had his fish on, he actually broke the cicada off, and we thought, oh, the fly's gone. The next thing we know, the fly pops out. So he broke it off, but the fly popped up, and we're floating along, and we see his fly now floating on the top, but it's now not connected to his rod. And another fish came up and hit it. And we're like, oh, my gosh, that's unbelievable. And then it went down for a second, and we're just watching. And about maybe 3 seconds later, boop, the fly popped back up again. And we floated over and netted the fly. It was unbelievable. We had 2 fish hit it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But they get they get fished at quite a bit in the cicadas. It's pretty common to have those fish bump the cicada and not actually hook up. Do you see that quite a bit?
I do. I would say that almost in every hatch, if you're on the twilight part of the hatches, you know, if you're towards the end of the hatches, they'll even get spooky enough that they won't even eat a natural until it sinks.
Yeah.
So, you know, you definitely want to be proactive on your planning. If the word gets out that cicadas are going, you want to come. If you get to the 3rd, 4th week of cicada hatch, you know, they will get more finicky on that. And I was just going to say, whatever type of floating you're using, we need a plug for that floating.
we went over and netted that fly, and I think we retired it in the box because it was like that just can't happen. That was our big story when we got back to we stay the summers in Colorado, and so when we got back and told all our wives, they were kind of looking at us like, yeah, right.
Yeah,
that was unbelievable.
Yeah, we need some documentation of those kind of stories.
Yeah,
right.
we need proof of that. Going back to a tactical standpoint with the midge fishing right now and with the Blue Winged Olives coming up, as a guy that fishes the river a lot, I mean, what length leader are you using? And give me some of your presentation, you know, as far as if you're either floating or if you're, you know, walk wading, and some of you know, the tactics that you use to catch those fish.
So a couple things I want to say that really the biggest problem here, and I see this a lot of times, it's not really a problem, but we see fish, for instance, especially midging fish and small flies, we see them in the slick water, and so we're like, oh, there's fish, great. The trick on these type of fish, and this is something that I learned from fishing, you know, brookies and doing little tiny streams that are really finicky, is you can't walk right up to them and then cast to them right there. As much as we can see them, they can see us. And so really what you want to be is a little bit sneaky, and I think that's really a lot of game stuff. You need to be sneaky. So, you know, a lot of times, like on slick water, I'm going to fish upstream eddies into the slick water from the farthest distances that I can see the fly. So oftentimes, if you're standing on a jetty and below you is the slick water and the fish are right there, they'll go down just from your presence being there. So oftentimes I'll fish low river and we'll cast into the upstream current and then try to get a drift into that slick water from the upstream current. And that's something a lot of people don't do. We do that also from the boats. We'll anchor down below, and then we'll fish upstream current to
and
to
just to be clear, you're talking about where the main river's coming by and it's creating a back eddy where then the water now is flowing away, going back upriver.
Yep.
You're going to be presenting your fly on the boat side or where you're standing side, and then letting it drift basically going upriver to the fish.
Yep. Oftentimes,
which will be facing you, right?
Yes.
They'll be facing into the current.
Yeah, and you'll be even facing upriver. It'll feel downriver because you have an upstream current, but the main body will be going down, and you'll be facing upriver.
Gotcha.
So that's a pretty cool technique, and you'll actually have to play out line so you can get a natural drift into those areas. The other big mistake that I think a lot of people have is because of the fish pure population, there's fish all the way right near the edges, and especially on these small bugs. People oftentimes will just dive right into the water and walk out, so, chest deep and start fishing, and oftentimes miss quite a few fishing opportunities right next to the shore, right near the bank. It's a good tactic to start fishing. Just drop your line in right at the very, small, and just, you don't even really cast. You're just kind of doing like a tenkara type of style, just dropping the fly in and fish your way out and then move into the water. But oftentimes I know that there's fish in certain areas and little seams right along the bank, and people just miss those opportunities.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And then, Woody, doubling back to something you had said, so if you're fishing that upstream eddy and the current's going away from you and your fly is going away from you and the fish are out there and they're facing you, tell me a little bit about your hook set when a fish is facing you, because a lot of times guys will yank it right out of their mouth. What do you do to ensure a good hook set?
Give yourself that little split second. If you can think about just even giving yourself just a little count. And then the other thing that I see a lot of times too is especially when you're playing out line in this situation, you're going to want to make sure that you don't have a lot of excess line. You'll miss all those fish with excess line. Midge fishing is some of the most rewarding fishing because you have to do everything perfectly. The fly has to be right. The drift has to be right. Your hook set has to be right. But it can also be one of the most frustrating because there's fish there, they're eating, and you just flat cannot get to them. So just give yourself a little bit of time. Slow yourself down a little bit. Give the fish the chance to go ahead and eat it, and then do, and you can just even do just a little bit of a strip set or just raising the tip. You got to think about that. When that fish bites that fly, it only has to move 1/8 of an inch to be a hook set. So if you have a lot of extra line out and you're having to pull in 3 or 4 feet of line to try to get that set, you'll never catch him.
Yeah, that's great stuff right there. Woody, what are you seeing as far as you said the fish are healthy? I know what the fish at the Green River are like because I've fished there, but for people that haven't been, and let's say they're, nice average anglers, they fly fish quite a bit. I mean, what can they, as far as size of fish, what should they expect, common?
Well, oftentimes not everyone's always happy with the wildlife resource guys and what they do. We are thoroughly excited with what they've done. A few years ago, they changed the slot limit. So the slot is now 15 to 22. And what that's really done is that has really moved the needle. As far as we were catching a lot of 15, 16-inch fish, now we're catching 18 and 20-inch fish. I mean, we were catching 20s last season like crazy. We're starting to see some good 20s now. Oftentimes in tailwater fisheries, especially when the water gets warm, you get really eel-looking fish. They have a big head and a small body, kind of like post-spawn fish in higher lakes. Here we're seeing fish where their head is smaller than their body, where, their body, actually comes out all directions. Big, nice, we call them shoulders, big, nice bodies on them, nice big fat bellies. So that the health of the fish is really strong. We don't really see a lot of chewed up fish. We're seeing just good, strong, healthy fish. And one of the things that's amazing with the Green River is the coloration of fish. Rainbows that are bright pink and flushed, almost spawn looking all the time. Browns with deep, dark brown and orange coloration. And you just don't see that everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, people look at my Green River photo album and they're just like, wow, Jay, what kind of filter did you use on your camera and this and that? I'm like, there is no filter. Those fish are amazing. the coloration is, like you said, it's amazing. Woody, in conclusion here, tell me about moving in from the Blue Winged Olive and then into cicada season, and then you have some fantastic fishing right during the middle of the summer. Can you briefly talk about what you have going on in those summer months?
Sure.
And even with the high traffic, with the floaters and everything else, there's still some outstanding fishing.
There is. The fish don't ever stop eating. They have to eat every day, just like us. A big chubby guy, he's going to eat every day. And these big chubby fish are going to eat every day as well. So it doesn't matter if there's rafts floating over the top or if it's 100 degrees outside. They're still going to eat. Now, what we do is we're going to transition. The blue wings are our first big dry fly hatch. Then we traditionally will see kind of an ant, kind of small terrestrial kind of stuff that kind of starts to happen. Then if everything lines up, then we see the cicadas. And then we kind of go to like a yellow sallies, which is actually a small stonefly. Not a lot of people know that that's a really small stone. We don't get the big stoneflies, but we get the yellow sallies, and oftentimes they're in like a 14 to 12 in a dry fly. And there'll be hatches that'll just blanket. And it looks like snow flying, but they're fluttering all over, and the bugs go in your nose. It's awesome. Then we go from stonefly or yellow sallies to basically then we start getting into our bigger terrestrials where we're going to see hoppers, we're going to see beetles, we're going to see all those things. And we want a good, dry, hot summer for those things to kind of happen. So once you transition into hopper season, then it's just we do a lot of hopper dropper stuff. Now, the summer can be some of the most rewarding fishing, even though we don't really like fighting off rafters and those kind of things. That's what makes this river so special, is because it's an open river. They haven't stopped anybody from coming, and that's what makes it so unique. So what we do tactically, fishing-wise, is oftentimes that's the time we're going to go lower river. Some of the B section and those grass cut banks that we talked about before are going to produce big hopper yields and big beetle yields. And so we will kind of concentrate. We'll move a lot of our guiding clientele down into the lower river and to try to get away from those high pressure days, especially on the weekends. Weekdays, it really is still no problem. On those weekends, those Saturdays, holidays, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, kind of long weekends, we're going to move them into the lower river and still get into plenty of fish down there.
Absolutely. And you have a fantastic guide service. So your guides are on the river every day. And how do my listeners find you guys as far as driving up there? You're up on top of the hill before you drop down. Maybe give me some driving times from maybe Salt Lake City Airport or maybe from Denver. How do people find you, and then how do they find you, a website and that type of stuff?
Well, all of our brochures, all of literature, everything that we print, all leads us to the website. The website is FlamingGorgeResort.com. It's really easy. If you do a search for the Green River, we're going to pop up right at the top. Our Green River Fly Shop pops up right on top if you search for Green River. And there's links that brings us all back to the FlamingGorgeResort.com website. We are really very fortunate. We're centrally located between Denver and Salt Lake. It's about 3.5 hours from the Salt Lake Airport to here, driving wise. People do often fly into Vernal or Rock Springs. We can pick people up at the airport. We're about 7 hours from the Front Range. So from the Denver area, a lot of our clients, especially during high water, Colorado guys love to come here on our protected fisheries when everything else is blown out. And we will see an influx of those guys, and we welcome them. So it's a great place. So don't trust your GPS as always when you put in Flaming Gorge Resort. Oftentimes it puts us up into Wyoming. But there's some good driving directions and map directions on our website.
Oh, great. That's fantastic. And, I look forward to getting up there and doing some fishing this summer. And I just want to thank you for being with us. And I know, having been at the Flaming Gorge Resort many, many times, it's a family-owned operation, and it's just got a real nice family feel. You see a lot of families. You see a lot of just all sorts of people, and it's just a real friendly environment, and I want to give you kudos for that, for creating that, and you have awesome staff there that you work with. And so thanks for being with us today and shedding some light on the Green River and Flaming Gorge Resort. And we'll be maybe check in with you this summer and see how conditions are. And I'll look you up this summer, okay?
Jay, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. And we'll be letting you know when the cicadas are hopping, too.
That sounds great, man. All right, you take care.
Thank you.
All right, buddy. Bye.
Well, that was very good to get to speak with Woody Bair of the Flaming Gorge Resort. I know last summer when I got to meet him, he spent quite a bit of time with us just going over how the fish were acting and some of the different things with the nuances of the river and such. And, I've floated it many times, but it's amazing when you can talk with locals that have, basically spent tons and tons of time on a fishery, how much you can learn. And I just want to thank Woody for being on with us. And I want to thank you guys, our listeners. We've just this podcast seems to be just gaining great momentum, and we're getting tons of positive comments and feedback, and I get some great emails, and I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. Tell your friends about it. We appreciate the referrals. We appreciate your support, and if you go on iTunes, you can give us a 5-star rating. That helps us out with our standings with iTunes, and just thank you for your support. You can follow along at jscottoutdoors.com. You can follow our Facebook, jscottoutdoors, on Instagram at jscottoutdoors, and also our YouTube channel. We have a successful YouTube channel with 1 million plus hits, views, and our subscribers. I think we have over 1,200 and something subscribers, and it seems like every day we add to that. And just thank you for all of the support. If you have any comments, questions, or things you'd like to see on the show, please email me at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. And we appreciate any comments that you have, and we just thank you for being with us. And spring is definitely here, and the summer is right in front of us, and it's going to be a good time to get out and do some fishing. I'm going to be heading to Colorado here soon, and I've got lots of great fishing in front of us here, and look forward to getting on the river, getting my boat all dialed in, and get back to rowing and spending time out there on those great rivers. So until next time, guys, God bless.